have all of you. And I'm sure you don't mind. We are recording this session for various purposes. But of course, if you want your image to be recorded, then you can let us know. But welcome each and every one of you to this short, we call it webishop, because we have workshop in using the web, the World Wide Web. So welcome to all of you. As you probably learned from the information that you received, that this session is actually, we have an hour and a half, about hour and a half to have the discussion. We would very much like to have this as an interactive as much as possible. So at any time you can interrupt and raise a question, but you feel free to use the chat, and then someone will field all those questions later on. Just briefly, before I go on, let me open with a word of prayer. How precious it is, Lord, to realize that you are thinking of us each and every day. We can't even count how many times a day that you turn to think about us. You did it yesterday, and you will do it tomorrow, and we thank you. We know, Lord, that there's so many things that's just been happening. Many of those that we don't have any control, but we know that you are in charge and you are in control. And we commit to you the time that we'll be sharing together with all these lovely people. Holy Spirit, come in and be with us. Allow us to listen to you and to be guided by your grace, love, and care for each and every one of us. Please each bless each and every one of us. In your mighty name we pray. Amen.
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 Thank you, Viliami.
As I said earlier on, my name is Viliami Puloka. I am one of the health promotion team, health promotion forum of New Zealand. And today we are very, very happy to have this opportunity to share with you some of our thoughts, but also to have you contribute to that space as we continue to think about the best way that we can contribute and share with our fellow human beings, especially Pacific people. I think it's great that we have an opportunity to be able to help others and to remind ourselves how best we can communicate and engage with our own people, especially the Pacific people in Aotearoa and in everywhere else. By the way, the beach that you're looking behind me here, this is Tonga, and this is actually where I am at the moment. I am here in Tonga, in Nuku'alofa, and I welcome you anytime, and everything is good here in Tonga, good weather. No COVID-19, no limitation of our freedom to do whatever. So you're welcome to come and join us here. I thought that it's so wonderful and the opportunity for us, maybe before we continue, as you know, we have two very good speakers that we'll be hearing about today, Sonia Tuitahi and Kathleen will come on later. But before we do that, can I ask that each of you just tell us your name, introduce yourself. Tell us your name, where you work, and an idea why do you wanted to participate, or what you are looking forward to expect to get out of this session. And maybe I just go by, so I ask you that you unmute yourself and let us see your beautiful face if you wish, and introduce yourself. I'll probably just go with what I see in my screen. So I have Sherry from Otara Health to begin with, and then Mariana.
Talofa,
Thank you for the introduction. I am Sherry Lunovich from Aotearoa Health Charitable Trust. I am the hippie Aotearoa coordinator there, but I am moving into a health coach role soon. So just really interested in this webishop around design for Pacific communities and how we can help to empower our communities here in South Auckland. Thank you.
Thank you. Mariana?
Kia ora koutou, ko Miriana Tipere ahau. Kia ora, I'm Miriana and I am part of Health Promotion Forum. I am the Maori Health Promotion Strategist, beaming into you from the lovely Bay of Plenty. And my job is to look after everything around health promotion to do with our Maori communities. But keen to listen and see how we can awhi our Pacifica Polynesian brothers and sisters, because we consider you guys whānau. Kia ora.
Okay, I go to Estella, then Chin, then Fifita, please.
Good morning. My name is Estelle. I am speaking on, I work for Age Concern Taranaki, and I'm based in Taranaki, New Zealand. I'm interested to learn other cultures and how we can work together. Thank you.
Thank you, Estelle. Fifita?
Malolele, my name is Safita and I am the Pacific Health Promoter for the ADHD bowel screening program. I'm the only Pacifica in my team, and so I'm really excited to hear and learn from lovely giants today. Malo abito.
Let's go to Chin. Welcome, Fifita. Chincho.
Yes, talofa lava. My name is Chincho. I'm working for Screen South. We deliver bowel screening and cervical screening and breast screening program. And I'm working for this Screen South for last 10 years. I'm really keen to learn today about the Pacific culture and how I can strategy making a planning for our community in here in Christchurch.
Thank you and welcome, Chin. Lavinia, Lee, and then Tai Whalongo, please.
Kia ora koutou katoa. I'm Lavinia Ngatoko. I'm the Communications Advisor for the Health Promotion Forum of New Zealand. And as my title suggests, I handle all the communications for HBF. Thank you.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Uluvanaka. Kia ora, my name's Lee Tuki and I am a kaimātai mahi Māori for the brand new equity recruitment and diversity team. And my portfolio is equity for Māori and Pacifica. So I was super excited when I saw that you put this out, Tione. Yay. So thank you. Thank you to everybody.
Thank you.
Talo Falava, Malo Seifua. Looking beautiful there in Tonga Viliami. Malo. My name is Tai Whalongo and I'm with the Stroke Foundation. And reason of coming to this is that I'm still learning. I'm still young and still need to learn some more about our Pacific engagement. And yeah, whawhai lava for this great opportunity. Malo soifua.
Malo soifua. Can we go to Lynn and then Jacinda?
Hello, I'm Lynn. I'm beaming in from Northland, Tutukaka, Northland at the moment. I'm actually co-founder of the Butterfly Trust, which is a small NGO that operates in Vanuatu. So really, my interest is in learning so much more about engaging with the indigenous people in the Pacific, and particularly Vanuatu, where we have been working for the last 10 years in health and education. And given the situation, with the climate right now, we are moving into the field of planetary health and, really wanting to expand our work in a holistic way. And part of that would be learning about deepening our communication with local communities. Thank you.
Good Plameli true. You know Mary nothing, you got number, yeah. Okay, Jacinda.
Kia ora, everybody. I'm Jacinta. I'm with Family Planning. I'm the South Auckland Sexual Health Promoter. I've just started there, but my passion is to work with our Pacifica youth and trying to better educate them on good sexual health practices. So yeah, I'm here today to kind of gauge a better understanding of how to approach that in the Pacifica community. So yeah, any help at this stage for me is great. So thank you.
Thank you and welcome. And Christina.
Kia ora, everybody. My name is Christina. I work at Family Planning as well. But my area is Central and East Auckland. And yeah, I'm very excited to be here today. I know that this is an area where I can definitely upskill and, you know, hopefully do more and do better with the Pacifica community. So yeah, I'm very excited and thank you for having me here.
Welcome. You're coming to the right place. Can I ask Emma and then Kathleen, and then we go to Sione.
Kia ora koutou katoa and warm Pacific greetings to everyone. I work with the Health Promotion Forum. You would have got a billion emails from me lately. And I'm looking forward to our panel discussion later today. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. Kathleen. So I don't have to introduce yourself.
Malo lele, my name is Kathleen Dway Taufo'o. I am the Executive Director for Wahe Whanua Tonga Methodist Mission, otherwise called Siaola. And I'm pleased to be here and happy to take any questions, whether I know the answer or not. But thank you so much, Viliami, for the invitation. Malo.
Kathleen, by the way, is a lawyer by training, but a real social champion, looking after the social affairs of the Tongan Methodist Church. So, and we are so happy, and thank you very much, Kathleen, for spending this time with us. Sione?
Thank you, Viliami, and malo lele, and kia ora, warm greetings, everyone. Along with Viliami, I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to all of you, to not only to our webishop today, but also to the Health Promotion Forum of New Zealand. I'm Tongan by ethnicity. My culture is fused with many because of my learning, my travel, my study, my faith. My grandchildren tell me that I'm a wonderful grandpa. I think they get away with many things when they are around me. But I've been in the public health space for going some 30 years now in New Zealand, also teaching at Massey University and a few other places. Still very much involved, serving our Pacific community, our Tongan community, just to keep in touch with reality and enjoy the challenges and the rewards, and learning, working alongside and learning with our community. So some of those things might come across today in our sharing. Thank you. Back to you, William.
Thank you, Sione, and thank you very much. Have I forgot anybody? Is that all, Emma? Did you?
We will just welcome Delvine, who unfortunately hasn't got a mic on her computer.
Okay. Well, we do welcome you, and I'm sorry that we cannot see your beautiful face, but you're definitely, we'll welcome you, and thank you for joining us. Yes. Oh, maybe I should introduce myself, but by the way, I'm Viliami, and Viliami Puloka. Like Sione, I'm from Tonga, but both of us, we like to think that we are global citizens. We're very close neighbor here. I can see his house right now, just outside from my own house here in Tonga. But anyway, I am a medical doctor by training, public health physician, I like to call myself. I used to work in many places. I the last work here in Tonga as a physician and as a public health person. And then I work with the Secretary of the Pacific Community for about 10 years in Noumea, New Caledonia. And after that, I come and work with Sione, help Sione, and also as a research fellow and a lecturer with the University of Otago, the public health. So I am your host today. And I'm very proud and very happy to have all these good people. Sione was wondering if we have time to allow all of you to speak, because we all say, oh, we run out of time. But you know, Pacific time has nothing to do with the clock. It has everything to do with your commitment to share your space with anybody. And that's the root of the Pacific time, coconut time, whatever it is, because whatever it is, it's not the time is the clock, but it's your willingness to share your space and share yourself with others. So thank you very much for this very good session, Sione. And I think we're in the very big feast here. I know Sione and Kathleen will be our main speaker, panelists today. But as I introduced earlier on, I would like this session to be very interactive. And please do fill your question in the chat, or you can just raise your hand. But I thought that maybe I should begin by sharing a few slides. And I'm not going to dwell on those slides, but I just give you a background for the topic and allow Sione and Kathleen to talk more about that. And how many times I do this, I'm still asking, how do I share my slides? Yeah, I think. Are you able to see these slides here?
Yes, Viliami.
Okay. Okay, this is the topic that we are talking about today, is engagement by design and not by default. And this is not to insult anybody, but unfortunately, many times as Pacific people, we appear to be like a little appendix and afterthought. And then all you good people, many people will think of us because they need to tick the box. They have talked to us, but actually they already said everything and then just talk to us. But you know, like everybody else, we have the power and we have the choice to create our tomorrow yesterday. And I think this is important for us Pacific people to know that we do have the power. And the reason why I say, because tomorrow is today is the tomorrow that we dreamt about yesterday. And that is really true, because today was yesterday, was tomorrow when you will talk about it from yesterday. But the point is that we do have the power to decide our tomorrow, and we can do it today. So this is really the topic that, and Sione and Kathleen will talk more about it. The thinking heart, the feeling minds, the moving hands. I think it was Descartes who come up with the saying that I think, therefore I am. But I think in the Pacific, we can say I feel, and therefore I am. We get criticized sometimes, and we get the people say, oh, this really soft science. Feeling is wishy-washy, you know, it's not substance with, but that's what it is, and that's what the main topic that we will be discussing today. And it's very important, as I said earlier on, that we must begin with the end in mind. If Pacific people is the group that you're for lack of better expression, is your target group, then they must be at the forefront of your thinking. You must be intentional in everything that you do, and have them, you begin with your audience, if that's the people that you are thinking of working with. Of course, we know, you know, there's a big difference between being efficient and being effective. Being efficient, you do the right thing, you do it right. But being effective, it's make sure that it's relevant and useful for the target, for the people that you're working with. Efficient means that you do the things right, but you know you can do the wrong thing right. So you need to have the right thing at the beginning before you do it right. So efficient and you know, and we're very busy and we're very good at beginning something, starting something, but we can only be effective if we begin with the people that were the audience that we are thinking about at the beginning. And of course, this is really what we you know, this is all the outcome that we are looking for as a Pacific community. You know, of course, we all want to be healthy. We want to have higher education achievements. You know, we want to be better economically. We want to thrive, not just alive and not just exist. And of course, a lower crime rate. This is some of the basic social capital that really what the desire and an outcome for us as Pacific people. But I like us just to keep in the back of our mind that, you know, being productive is not just getting things done, but getting what matters most done. What matters for the people, not just getting things done and you tick your boxes and so, but and those are, as I said, that this is really all this talk about is we talk about the you know, our cultural aspects, our values. Those are the social glue, super glue that keeps people, enable people. By the way, health promotion is the art and science of enabling people to be masters of their own destiny in their well-being. And we have to have this commitment to each other, and our value have to be very sensitive to the cultural aspects of the people. And this is my last slide. And you can have this and we can talk more about it, but this is really just a comparative looking at the different values and how the Pacific looked at a worldview compared to the Western or other cultures' worldview. And you can see this, and I'm sure you have been working with these principles, the spirituality aspect of it, the Ranged authority, conformity, extended family, and interdependence rather than independence, feeling of others more important than individual rights, being very non-confrontational. And as I said earlier, in a straight line is a curve. People say present-oriented and people-centered. I think those are the kind of sort of Pacific values of communal sharing and caring for each other. This is not to say that that is better than the other list, the other side, but this is just how the different worldview just we know it in life, in our daily lives. And that's it. I thought that would be just as an introduction to get our thinking going as we allow our two speakers to dwell in more detail for all those topics. So unless there's some burning question, and I would like to shift now this part to and ask our presenters to do the presentation, and I'll ask Sione to go first, then Kathleen. And as I said, at any time you want to raise your hands or field the questions, please do so. Thank you very much. Malo pito. Sione, I'll give it to you.
Thank you, Viliami. You can, you know, unshare your PowerPoint. Again, a warm welcome, everyone. Viliami, you have laid a strong, firm foundation there to hook our Talanoa, our conversations this morning, onto. And thank you for doing that. Quite a few things that you have mentioned, I will touch on them, but perhaps add on, a few more points onto that. Firstly, I do not have a PowerPoint. Deliberately, I'd like to, see your radiant faces. There's enough barrier already with the not having the physical presence. And I thought I don't want to put another layer there because the essence of today's topic is about engagement. And Pacific peoples, as Viliami has indicated in his presentation, it's the engagement of the mind and the heart. And I would like to, engage in that way and to connect at that spiritual and intellectual level, if possible. Also, I'd like to add a few other things before I focus on the topic. Well, first, and so the next one, I'd like to acknowledge some of my co-workers and friends who are here, with us. Me and Tai Fa'alonga, for instance, we go back to 1999 at the Auckland Regional Health Promotion Services that is now part of the Auckland Regional Public Health Service. And Lee, we worked in the New Zealand Public Health Association and many other, projects is wonderful. And quite a few of you who are here today. It's so wonderful to have all of you. Hopefully also we have new friends, and at the end of the day, we are co-workers. As Viliami said, Health Promotion is about enabling other human beings, our fellow human beings, to take greater control, take greater ownership and leadership of their own well-being and the determinants that cause it, but also, ownership of their destiny and their future. I would like also to mention that health promotion is in all cultures. It's, since time immemorial. In the beginning, there was God, there was the Word, and there was also health promotion. It's about our well-being as humanity. And I wonder whether I can show this book on screen or not. It's too blue because of my background, it doesn't show. But there's a nice book called Promoting Health in Aotearoa, New Zealand. The editors are Professor Louis Signal and Dr. Mihi Ratima. They are wonderful colleagues and friends of ours. I co-authored 2 chapters in the book. That's the only New Zealand-based health promotion textbook that has been published here in New Zealand. Most of the knowledge we share and we use have been drawn from overseas literature and from other places. And so the effort in 2015 to pull together this book is to help us. So I invite you to look up that book. You can read a bit more about some of the things that I will talk about. There's a chapter there on Pacific health promotion, but also what I mentioned earlier, that health promotion is in every culture. It just recently became a formal discipline, a formal professional practice in the 70s. Before that, there was health education, trying to change behaviors. But with the Ottawa Charter, preceded by the Alma Ata Declaration, 1978, we now have what is called the new, health promotion. I mention those things because the Ottawa Charter talks about the importance of the cultural context. In order to understand the individual, you need to know the cultural context. So today's topic is actually about engaging with ethnic groups that are largely Pacific, their background. And it's important, therefore, to know their cultural context in order for us to be successful in engaging, working with them. You note I said work with them, not on them. You know, there's a world of difference there. And those of you in health promotion and public health, community development, you understand, you know, what I mean. But you know, for those of you who do not, that might be a question later on. Two learning outcomes from my this part of our conversation, you know, for me, is one, that you develop an understanding of ways to engage with Pacific. Two is to develop a deeper appreciation of the culture, you know, its worldview, its value systems, its institutions, and therefore, you know, the practices. Let me touch on the theme for today, engagement by design, and Viliami put there two sets of abbreviations or acronyms. You know, the first one was the 3H approach. You know, the heart, the head, the heart, and the hand. You know, as you know, they are a metaphor, and they stand for how the heart and the mind move the hands to act. You cannot act appropriately and properly unless the head and the heart, you know, work together well, you know, in the first place. And Pacific peoples, as Viliami said earlier, you know, they are moved by the heart, and feelings are important because they prompt, they engender the engagement in a deeper way compared to an intellectual exercise, you know, engaging with the mind only. And I will talk about that more later on. So let me focus on a way of engaging with Pacific peoples. The first one is to understand the worldview of Pacific peoples. But before I explain that, let me mention very quickly two things. One, you know the migration story of how Pacific peoples came to New Zealand. They are indigenous in their islands, but in the 50s and 60s, New Zealand economy was booming then. You know, workers in the manufacturing, you know, industry and other such low-paid, unskilled work was needed, and so the immigration door was opened for Pacific peoples, and quite a few of the second and third and fourth generation even of today are descendants of those original migrants to New Zealand. They came, of course, and locked into the socio-economic ladder, and so therefore some of the challenges, the determinants of health that they are facing. And institutions and individuals are working very hard to address at the institutional level, the policy level, and downstream at the community level to address those needs, address those challenges. And we are still working on them today. And we cannot do those things alone. You know, we have to work with our non-Pacific co-workers and professionals like yourselves who are here with us today. Let me go back to the worldview. When we talk about worldview, Pacific worldview, we're actually talking at a higher level, at a generic level. We are not ethnic specific at this point. We can do that, but that's another workshop and another time. But what I will talk about in a minute are the things that Pacific ethnic groups have in common. Yeah. So the worldview is that we are all connected, that humanity and nature are one. And this is evidential in the concept of whanua, or whenua in Te Reo Maori. It's whanua in Samoan, it's vanua in Fijian, it's enua in the Cook Islands. Simply, it means humanity and the environment are inextricably one. You cannot separate one from the other. A poor environment means an unhealthy, people. So the well-being of the whenua is equally important as the well-being of humanity. That philosophy, is amazing to those who are not familiar with that, because the dominant paradigm in the world today, especially in the sustainable development and in economic fields, the thinking there is that humanity is in charge, is separate from nature, and therefore we can exploit nature to the max. And then look at the consequences that we are facing today. Wind, fire, hailstone, and the flood, the global warming, the climate change, the decline in biodiversity, and all the ecological challenges that we are facing today. So our ancestors from this part of the world, I think they've got it right, that humanity is part of nature and we are interdependent. One of the themes that Viliami mentioned earlier. And because we are one, because we are interdependent, the thinking then will be not only the thinking is systematic. We see the connectedness of all things. Our thinking is secular and systematic rather than linear. When you walk into a situation, you see the connectedness of the relationship. You see the whole family, for instance, rather than zooming in on the one member of the family who is your client, a child or a youth or a male or a woman. A family, a Pacific mind walks into a household and see the entire system, the whole whānau, the whole family. This is reflected in Seme Sanduri's Te Whare Tapawha model. The fourth dimension is the whānau. Individuals cannot be healthy when the whole whānau are not healthy, and vice versa. And because of that, that interconnectedness, we work together, we think together, we serve for the well-being of the whole community. And we know the well-being of the individual is nested in the well-being of the family, of the community, of the nation, and of the world, for that matter. This says something about individual right versus collective right. And this is one dimension in this conversation around vaccination. Those who argue for individual right and those who stand for collective right. We need to find the balance. They are not absolute. They are actually relational. And therefore, our understanding of health and well-being is relational. My well-being is dependent on your well-being. The well-being of my head is dependent on the well-being of the other organs of my body. Again, it's a collective, systematic understand of life and well-being. And out of that, we have the value system, again, Viliami refers to, that we give and take, we share with love and care and compassion, reciprocity. We share our resources. We collectively own our resources. Our resources are for our well-being. We feel unhealthy and impoverished when we look at our neighbors or the rest of our community. They are not healthy and have their basic needs met. So it's a collective understanding of life. And when you look at that from a scientific biological viewpoint, that is actually the reality of nature. A cell cannot live on its own, even like risky cells like COVID-19. They need to find another being to hook onto. Within our whole body, as our good doctor knows, the cells, the organs, they work together for one purpose, although their functions are different, their shape might be different, but they serve one purpose, and that is the well-being of the whole human body. So is humanity at the social level. And so we love and care, we share, and we share our knowledge, we share our resources. It means then that the way to engage with Pacific people, as Viliami said, you approach with the end in mind, an end that is co-created, and an end that is of mutual benefit, an end that will enrich you as the worker, as well as the community that you're working with. When you walk into a community, you learn a lot. You learn how to engage. You learn the way they work. You learn their values. In return, they will learn from your services. So it's about exchanging values, exchanging knowledges. We do not work on them. No, we work with them. So we are now coming down now to the third part of how to work with Pacific peoples, the practices. Now, this is the hand part. Earlier, we talked about the head, we talked about the heart. Now let's talk about the hands. An approach that I, based on experience, and also, the research on Pacific values and practices, is that first, you build the relationship. The relationship is very important. And once the relationship is sound, strong, stable, trustful, reliable, and then you can talk business, and then you deliver the business, you will change, and then continue to maintain the relationship. Because it's about building a structure. It's about building a human network. It's about building a social service and relationship that will continue to be used, in the future. And it's a two-way relationship. So again, build a relationship, do the business, maintain the relationship. And you work in a way that is enabling and empowering. And you listen to them to understand their reality, to understand their own capacities, and to understand their values. That means also we need to reflect on our own practices and ourselves. Whether our worldview is that our fellow human beings have got the agency within themselves, that in time they can take ownership of their own well-being, and they can get rid of you. Your service is done when they say, bye-bye, I don't want to see you again. Actually, when you come again, we will work together to spread the good work that you are doing, and we work together and serve others as well. Let me touch on the 4F acronym. The food, the family, the fellowship, and the fun. Again, it's a metaphor. It's a metaphor for many things. One is that food is a socializing factor in all cultures, not just Pacific cultures. Served in the appropriate way and the healthy ways and healthy portion, food will not only provide sustenance, but it's a platform where people can come together and celebrate and have that meaningful conversations about their future. What I'm basically saying, if there's an opportunity, share food, with your family, the community that you visit. I guess when I talk about this, Tai might recall 2000 when we had our early childhood project in Auckland, and we had hundreds of early childhood children, from early childhood centers around Auckland, Pacific, that is. And we engage with the teachers, we engage with the whānau, but we made sure that we feed our children well, on that day. And we had fun, and we had fellowship, and we talk about the well-being of the children as part of the family, as part of the community. When you look at the whānau model framework, I had the bounty of working with Sam Esanduri at Mass University for more than 10 years, and Health Promotion Forum, has the same bounty of still working with him, all these years. And we talk about whānau and a few other things before it came out public as a policy initiative. That model, like a few Pacific models, highlights the significance of the family as the foundation institution for society, the smallest unit, but the most important unit. The whānau is the foundation, for the whare. Without a strong foundation, the whare will be, weak. And it's important, therefore, as a first house of learning, a first house of spirituality, a first house of well-being. And it's the family that is not only the repository of the culture, the values, the knowledge, the practices, but also the carrier into the future. And it's not a surprise that experts in the field of health promotion and community development point to the whānau, as not only a system, but a platform, as a site, an institution through which the well-being of the community can be built. My health promotion model for Nuala, which has 6 dimensions of well-being, from physical, mental, spiritual, social, economic, cultural, and ecological. It recommends being implemented first at the whānau level, although it has 5 levels where you can apply, the Whanuaola model. Again, the 4 F's, food, family, fellowship, and fun, is a metaphor for the efficacy, and the significance of the family. Kathleen has got a program called Family Lere. Again, it points to the importance of the whānau. I haven't kept track of the time, but I think it's time for me to pause there and hand it over to Kathleen. But I hope I have triggered some thoughts in your heart and your mind to ask some profound, hard questions for Viliami and Kathleen, not me, to answer. Okay, thank you. Back to you, Viliami.
Thank you very much, Sione, and thank you for discussing all these very, very important. And I think mainly what I get out of your discussion, among other things, the emphasis on relationship. And I think this is, of course, a very, very key cornerstone of the Pacific engagement, is relationship. Actually, in our culture, the Pacific, every woman is a mother or a sister or an auntie. Every male is a father or an uncle or a brother. And you wouldn't dare do something nasty about those kind of relationships. And actually, in some of the languages, we don't even have, cousins, so we just call it kas or toko. But there's no real word that we express, because our feeling towards those other relationships is actually a brother or a mother or an auntie. And so the relationship there, the va, is very, very important in our Pacific culture. So I would say that if you are to do life successfully in doing life with Pacific people, you have to pay attention about those kind of relationship. Thank you very much, Sione. Please, if you have any question, I don't see any question in the chat. Either it's clear as mud, or you're still thinking about that. But please do contribute, and we have time to do that. But can I ask Kathleen now, please, to continue the Talanoa? Thank you. Welcome, Kathleen.
Thank you, Viliami, and thank you, Soni Tutahi, for a great discussion. This should be a discussion. Just listening to what you're talking about is basically my life in the last 18 years in the community. So my background is that I'm New Zealand born. My parents came here in the 1970s, and they were part of the Dawn Raids. They actually were some of the people that hid some of the family members and friends when the police came. And so you look back on that and we see how far we've come. As Pacific people in Aotearoa, I believe we still have a lot more work to do to make things right with our Pacific people. And so I just think about when we talk about engagement in terms of our families and my time in the community, like Sione talks about, there's so much learning that needs to happen for everyone, even for us as New Zealand born Tongans and our migrant families that come over from the islands. But if I take it back to the work that I currently do, so we have a social service in the Tongan community, and we look after areas of social health, education, language and culture, and financial well-being. And I think about the way that our services have developed over the last 6 years since I've been on board. And the blueprint for the way Siala works is that, like Sione was talking about, is that we need to take it back to our communities, and they have to design the programs and services that work for them. And so that's what we've actually been doing. I have an amazing board of trustees who are actually a lot of church leaders and community leaders whose aim is to ensure that the communities that they serve in terms of pastoral care are taken care of, as compared to many boards where it's really about growing and developing, and it's about funding, and it's about resources, and it's about building empires sometimes. But when your board members are made out of ministers, they have to answer to the people that they provide pastoral care to. And so there's an extra layer of ensuring that these people are taken care of. I think about Siala has been offered funding in government to provide services, and we've had to say no, because the services that they want us to provide, we know hand on heart will not work for our communities. We've tried it in the past because we want to receive those the support from government, and then it doesn't work and nobody benefits. The government doesn't benefit because they've given us funding. We don't benefit because our people are not responding. So it's a waste of time, being involved in services that are prescribed to us. So I have a board that says to me, it's not about, our organization is not about doing things that have been prescribed by government because of research that has been done overseas or have been done by another ethnic group and they think that it's going to work for us. My board says, go back to the community that we're serving, ask them what they need, what they want, develop programs that they want, and then whether we get support or not from funders, we just go ahead and get the job done. And so over the years, we've had a lot of volunteers, professionals in different sectors, but a part of the church who say, put their hand up and says, I've been working in mainstream my whole career, 10, 15 years, and I know this is not working for my community. So I'm here to put up, roll up my sleeves and do some work for Seaola. And not only that, but help develop our services. So we have our services are Family Lele services. And what is Family Lele? Family is family. Lele is good or well-being. I remember when we were approached by the ministry to do work around family violence prevention. The word violence, just the word violence in itself, will not bring our community to get help in this area. And I think back a few years ago when I took a family violence program to our quarterly church leaders meeting, where over 200 leaders in Wellington met, and we presented our program to them. And the first thing they heard, they didn't hear all the great work that we're about to do. All they heard was the word violence. And that's that stigmatization of my community. And so the church leaders would say to us, well, are you labeling us violent? And so we learned a lot from that. And so we had to go back to government and say, can we change the wording? I know your campaign uses that word, but that will not allow us to go into our communities and help them. So we, my Reverend at the time and Reverend Davita Finau, who chaired it, came to me and said, let's change the name to Family Lele, which is strength-based, which is positive, which is saying to our community, let's work together, let's journey together. I'm not here to tell you how to look after your family, but we see something that is not quite right. Let's work together to address those issues. And so we walked it back, and we have a program called Family Valele. Va is what Sione talked about in terms of that relationship, the importance of that relationship, Family Valele. That program has actually won 2 District Commander Awards from counties Manukau. It has also won a National Police Award for evidence-based work for family violence prevention in an ethnic-specific space. But if you ask me if government would want to fund something like that, they still have a prescribed way of doing it. And we try to do it in that prescribed way. I'll give you an example. There's a family violence program that is, it's prescribed. It's a 13-week program, and you look at the definitions of violence. We took it into our churches, and first off, you're not going to get a lot of parents attending for 13 weeks, knowing that there are a lot of children at home that need to be fed. Parents are working shift work, and so they have to find time for the program. And what are they're learning? They're learning about the word violence, but they're not learning about how to mend the relationships at home. So when we talk about community work with our Pacific people, there's a mindset, and it's been set, it's colonialism, it's everything, that we need to really reset the way we think and look at our Pacific people. There's a stigma that sits with our Pacific and our Maori community, which we really need to address. And I know government is trying to address it now. There's a big piece of work around social cohesion due to the terrorist attack in Christchurch. And where does the Pacificus fit into that? Is this an opportunity for us to actually set some of the wrongs right? But it's a big piece of work, because it's really us, what we've been doing these decades is knocking on the door of government and saying to them, hear our voice. listen to us and the way we see the world. And so there's hope there that we can actually all work together. And from like what Sione is saying, work together and see things from a different perspective. And once you see it from a different perspective, you're going to see successes in the way you work with our Pacific community. I can think of so many examples. Just of late, we went into lockdown for the last 13, 14 weeks. Seala had to become a food hub because the church leaders we've built that rapport in the relationship with the churches that they came directly to us for help. So we had to set up a food hub at one of our Methodist churches at Ellerslie. On the first day, the first 48 hours, 465 families came through. And the question is, why didn't they go to any of the other food banks? So the food banks have been available all over Auckland, for example. Why are Pacific people not attending or going there when they need help? And it's exactly what Sunedui Tahi talks about. Us as a Pacific community, and if I speak about our Tongan community, in the village, we don't go begging for food. Our families know when we need food. We know when there are events happening. If there's a funeral, we go and take food to the home. If there's a wedding, if there's a birthday, if we can see that that family doesn't have enough, we just go and we drop off the food to the house. No questions asked, and we accept it. And so for us to go and line up at a food bank, that's not something we do. And no matter how hungry we are. So what does that mean? It means that we have to relook at what food banks have to be for our communities. We have to redesign food banks for our Pacific community. I'll give you an example also. The food that the food banks give out fits a certain number of people, kind of people. Our people, we like taro, we like corned beef, we like, we want flour and rice, but that won't come in our food parcels. So Seala will redesign what we give our families. So we also know that this number of people in our homes are crowded homes. Large number of our families, between 6 and 20 people in the home. The stats from our organisation showed over 20% of the families that we looked after had between 12 and 20 people living in the home. So we're looking at the parents, their children, their partners, their children. So you can have 3 to 4 families in one home. So my question is, do food banks work for us when you have up to 20 people living in a home and you get one food parcel for each home? And then we don't want to go and line up at the food bank. So it is about relooking at the way we service our community. I'll give you another example. We have a home ownership program. It's creating wealth, generational wealth for our Pacific people. So we know there's generational poverty. But we also know that back in the 1970s, a lot of our parents bought homes. And then they sit on those homes. And yet we are told that this generation will always be renting for the rest of their lives. And yet there are assets sitting in the home. But we don't know any better. So we need to support these families to transition their assets to give them generational wealth. But who is thinking about that? No one's thinking about that. We're all still thinking about the generational poverty that's going to be passed on, and we can't fix it. We can't fix it, it's just too hard. And yet we can, because the solutions come from ourselves. These solutions are coming from the team I work with, team who actually have been in mainstream for many years. and can see that they can serve our community better by actually coming into Siala, where we will say to them, you do it your way, we trust you, and we'll go to bat for you when you go to government and to funders. So what I encourage is, I encourage us all to really relook at the way that we provide services to our communities, to Pacific, to ethnic specific. What works for the Tongans don't work for the Samoans. What work for the Samoans do not work for the Cook Islanders. And you can't ask a Samoan to go and find solutions for the Tongans. It's hard, you know, but it's something that we all need to address. You know, just even in the last couple of weeks, just with the lockdown and the transition my organization has had to go through, as a social service working in the health space, we've never had to work in the health space, and also working with the different dynamics amongst health providers and communities. And that's just within the Tongan space. So what's my job? My job is to understand the landscape, to build those relationships, to know what the needs are of these different groups, and to ensure that we all are on the same page in terms of our vision for the community that we're serving. If we have the people at the front of this work, it's what Viliami was talking about. If we're always thinking about those families, for example, if it's COVID, if we're always thinking about keeping those families safe, then whatever it takes, we can make it work. With health providers, with community, with church leaders, with government. If we're all focused on that family and keeping that family safe, we can transition whatever it is that we're doing to make it work. And we've done. I am so sure that every single provider in this room has been able to transition the way that they work to fit the COVID space that we're in today. But I'm asking that we need to go a little bit further. We do need to go a little bit further, because we're in a space right now where it's we've actually been asked by our communities, by the government, that we need to step up. Because when I think about the 3rd of December and when I think about the 15th of December and what that means for our communities, we don't have time to play politics. We don't have time to, this is the way we do things, and it's the way we've always done things, and we can't change. So it's really about, this is the time to listen to one another, to compromise, to find innovative ways to work together. I know one person here talked about our young people. This is a time when our young people's voices need to be heard, because as we do our work, there's a big generation of that needs to be supported, and their voices need to be heard, and their ideas need to be implemented and to be discussed at high level, because that's where the mobilization is of our communities during the COVID time. But I encourage us all, when I think about engagement and the heart and the mind and the hand, the heart has to come before the mind for me, because that Pacific is all heart. And if you don't have the heart for this type of work, then this is not the space for you, because with Pacific, you have to have the heart. People know, our Pacific people and our youth know if you don't have the heart. When you walk through those doors and they don't feel the heart, when you develop those services and they don't feel the heart, they don't feel that their voices in that, then it's not going to work. You know, so I think about the heart. The mind, we all have the mind. We've all been qualified to do these jobs. We are in these jobs because we've been given the mind. And then the hand follows. The hand will follow. And that's the same as youth. working with young people, as long as they know you've got the heart, they will come to the table. It doesn't matter how much qualification or headspace that you have, they're not going to come if they don't feel cared for and they don't feel loved. And it's the same with our families too. They won't come and learn about why they need to stop. If it's violence in the home, if it's their health, if it's education, they won't come to the table unless they know we care about them. And it's genuine care. And genuine care means genuine change in the way that we deliver our services for our communities. I think that's enough from me, but I'm happy to, just like Sione, I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Malabito, Kathleen. Oh, wow. What a mouthful. It's really is the kind of stuff that we are looking for. And I think that there's so many points that I can make comments on, but I won't. I'll allow the participants first. But I think just highlighting your whole focus on doing things that uplifting, moving away from whakama to whakamana type of thinking, and also it's very transformational, and it is not just being efficient, doing the right things, but doing things right, but doing the right thing right. To be very effective, and meaning it has to be relevant and to the particular people. And just lastly, if I may, just while you're thinking about your question, the rest of you, I think this is really great. I just thought of this thing here, that actually the eyes cannot see what the mind and the heart do not know, or do not feel, or do not appreciate. When we were studying anatomy in medical school, and our professor used to tell us, because we were looking, we'd be asked to, when we dissecting thing and try to identify a nerve or a muscle or something like that. And the guy kept saying, if you don't already know it, you won't be able to see it. It could be just be in front of you, but because you're not thinking about it, because you don't appreciate it. And I think this is really true, what you're saying, that our eyes, we need to cast upon the same landscape with a fresh eye. But our eyes cannot see what our heart and minds do not behold. We have got to have that in our mind, in our thinking, before we can see it. And anyway, there's so much from me here. I will allow the rest of you to field any question. And I'll give it to Lavinia if there is any question coming up from the floor. Or anybody, please just raise your hand. And
yes, Viliami, Fifita would like to ask a question. So I've said, just put your hand up. And
okay, here you go, Fifita.
Firstly, Malo, Alpito, Viliami, Sione, and Kathleen for just sharing your wealth of knowledge, but also your experience in the health space, especially engaging with the Pacific community. I just have a few questions. So in the position that I'm in at the moment, I work for a government agency. So I work for the District Health Board, which is under the Ministry of Health. And we are given government prescribed parameters that we have to follow. However, so just a little background on the work that I do. So I work in the bowel screening program, which encourages people between the ages of 60 to 74 to screen for cancer and then come into the hospital and get treated. From what we've seen in the last year that the program has been in the ADHB, that Pasifika are not engaging. And like you were saying, Viliami, that we're in the office, we're talking about targeting Pacific to increase participation. And that's been an ongoing conversation. And the question that I've been asked by the people I report to is, Fifita, how do we encourage our Pasifika to participate? And I think, you know, there's so many things that have already been done. We've gone into the community, but I personally feel that I think the community is sick of talking to us. And the reason being is that we go talk to them and then we come back and then we align that with what we're prescribed by the government, and it doesn't align, so nothing's being done. And so all of that effort that we do to engage with our community, we come back to the office, we present it to the people we report to, and they're like, oh, we don't have the funding to do that, or we can't do that, it's not within the scope of our work. So I just wanted to ask and put it out to the floor, how are some of the ways we can make these transformational relationships, but also doing it in a way that the government or whoever we report to is in their parameters? I'm sorry if that's not that clear, but I just wanted to hear your thoughts around that. Go ahead, Malo.
Thank you. And if maybe I could just ask Kathleen to continue, and maybe and then Sione. Thank you, Kathleen.
Thank you, Fifita, and that's a really good question. I have these two things that I want to speak to just around the promotion around that piece of work. I sit on the national campaign for cervical cancer for Pacifica, and like what you've experienced, when I got brought into that piece of work, I was brought in, and they were part way through the work. And so they were basically needed to tick their boxes. And so there was a big push for us to start all over again, because I knew that if the campaign went out the way that it was going to go out, it'll be exactly what you're talking about, Fifita. It will be too vague, it will be pan-Pacific, it'll be just a few posters, and it'll be just too hard to get that campaign into our churches. And because it's in an area that's taboo for our community, you needed to take a different approach. And I think what I needed to make clear with the committee, and I think the committee, they combined Pan-Pacific, Maori and Pacific. So that was the first mistake. They needed to give Maori their own space and give Pacifica their own space. And then they needed, within Pacifica, they needed to acknowledge ethnic specific. Because you and I, Fifita, know that our church ministers and our wives, we know what it's going to mean if you're trying to take these types of health promotion into our churches. It's not going to work. So it was really trying to make the people that was in the room understand the importance of them changing the way we do the work to fit, because I'm looking at the number of people that is going to listen to it and be moved by it and action what you're trying to take to them. And so it has to be on a more personal level. And the people around the table needs to be culturally competent. Like even me as a New Zealand born Tongan, I wouldn't know the first thing to know how to bring something like cervical cancer into the churches. So it's about who are the people, who are the right people to talk to, you know, and I think about the church leaders' wives, you know, they are the people that have influence in our community. And so it's about what do they want us to do? And how would they take it? It'll be because they will address the taboo, and they will speak to the right people, and also it will be them that will have the influence of the women in the church. And so it's really, Fifita, about really understanding the cultures, really understanding how far you need to take it to, and like, you know how when Sione and Viliami talked about putting our people at the forefront. So you're thinking about your mother, what's it going to take for your mum to hear that, and who would she hear it from, and how would it be presented? Because you and I know that a clinical person going into a presentation at church after service is not going to cut it. you know. So that's the type of conversations that we need to be having with government or with our providers. You know, we have to take it. We have to, and sometimes they don't want to listen, to be honest. And sometimes you need to put it out there and you let them fail, and then they'll come back to you, because that's how it's been with me. You know, they'll come back to me and say, yes, you were right, Kathleen, let's do it this way. And I think about where you're at, you know, because you're still coming up. And I know people, and I've got family members also who are in government, who they feel sometimes disheartened because they go into government and they wish that they can make that difference. And with, you know, they're Pacifica, they want to work for government, they want to make a change. And what I advise my family members is don't give up, make your way up. One of the biggest things that I sit in an advisory group for one of the sectors, and we're looking at the Pacifica people in government, in the public sector, and most of our people are in frontline. And so it's how do we bring them up into promotion, into areas of leadership where their voices can be held in policy level, so they'll be able to sit in positions where this conversation can be had at a place where those people are the ones that are making changes and you're part of the conversation. So I encourage you, Fifita, you're still young, you know, you're making your way up. I encourage all I love seeing our Pacifica people sitting in leadership positions in government, but there's not enough of us. There's not enough of us, and we need our voices in those spaces so we can talk like this. And when they say, what is the solution for our Pacific people? And there's a Fifita sitting there goes, I know, and then change can happen. So that's my encouragement to you, Fifita. Keep going. I know you'll make changes. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's a wise advice. And Sonia, you have 2 minutes to contribute to this question. I know we're running out of time, but please, can you contribute to this question? Thank you, Sonia.
I think most of the aspects needs to be answered was provided by Kathleen. What I can add on to that to broaden up the conversation and take note of the context of New Zealand where we are in. The bigger issue here is how society is adjusting to our increasing diversity and change the way we do things that advantage certain groups, but not everyone. Health is a human right, and it's about, therefore, the health and well-being of all. If a sector is healthy and the rest are not, everyone will suffer. And that's what we are experiencing around the world. COVID is now teaching us a big lesson, you know, in that although it exacerbates at the same time, exacerbates, that's a way to pronounce correctly, exacerbates at the same time the inequities in society. COVID did not cause it. It just take off the lid so that we can see what's the reality is. And that's the reality that we are dealing with, and the subsets are what Kathleen was talking about. There's a big major review of the health and disability system. One of the things we've been saying, some of us who are inputting into that consultation, is to make sure it's not the change of a structure only. It is also a change of culture. Yeah, because we've been changing structures for many, many years. You know, what we are doing now, what we are trying to change now is to change a big change that happened some 20 years ago. And we can change the structure. That is changing the head and the body. But unless you change the heart, that's the culture of the organization. Things won't change. They will remain the same. We have been around long enough to see that. And when you look across the world, that's what we are facing. We are becoming a global society, but certain dominant values and practices and institutions are locking people into places that are not natural. All these places were human constructs. And we need to dismantle those, rearrange those in order for us to be all well, to be all healthy and wealthy and have our fair share of our collective resources as humanity. You know, that's the bigger story. Thank you, Viliami. That's 2.5
Thank you,
minutes.
Shone. Thank you, Shone. And as probably all of you realize that we actually need another day, a whole day to continue this Talanoa, but it is really great. So, Lavinia, is there another question coming up, or anybody else for that matter?
Yes, Viliami, I have a question from Lynn. Lynn asks, what are some perspectives of gender equality from the Pacific context? How can the dialogue around gender be approached at the family and community layers to enrich dialogue to perhaps bridge perceived differences between the Western and Pacific understanding and application? The question is on the chat if you want to have a look, Kathleen or Sione.
Yeah. Okay, let me just make a comments here while Sione and Kathleen might be thinking about it. And this is really not just for us here, but anybody in the audience would like to have a comments. I think this is a very good question. And it could be a very awkward question when it posted to the Pacific. You know, Pacific there's a predominant view that we are inflexible, we are old-fashioned, we put too much emphasis on religion, and we use the Bible to find all the answer that for complicated things that we don't know. That's all true. But that's not the whole truth. I think for this type of scenario, as you all know and you can appreciate, for the Pacific, we have our issues ourselves, and we are going through it just like anybody else. I think the basic difference is that we always look at what is for the good of all. The community is foremost rather than the individual rights per se. Whatever is best for everyone, not just for individual. We do respect individual people's understanding and wishes. But this, as I say, I think the other thing about the value of communal appreciation in terms of cultural practices, but also the importance of community over individual, and also the importance of caring. Caring is part of our culture, and caring is that to the extent that we would go out our way to help whatever situation other people are in. And lastly, I say a big problem that, especially as those of us in health, I think we always have the thinking that we can fix everybody, and they have the problem and they come to us and we fix it. And I think, as Kathleen has been discussing here, is that not necessarily that you can fix people, but you feel with people and you walk with people and you share others' burden with you, and you contribute and you allow everybody to have a voice and to come to the conversation, to the talanoa. I think that's really how we do it. There's no magic bullet. There's no way of but those are I think the three main things. Caring is our culture, and sharing, and also appreciating the value of the communal thinking, collective versus the individual, and I think those are some of the basic principles. I'll let you, Sione or Kathleen, or anybody else who want to have a comments on that very important question, please contribute.
Firstly, as I said before, on the highest level, we see the interconnectedness of the whole system. If you tweak one aspect, it will affect the whole system. So therefore, the well-being of the individual and the freedom and the right of the individual should be in the context of the well-being of the collective. And also, we need to realize that it will take time to examine and then find whether it's factual, scientifically, ethically, before we introduce new concepts, into a community. So Pacific communities in New Zealand, they need the same time in the same space, in the same way that our health team here in New Zealand and our government are looking across the world and learn from the experience of Europe and make wiser decisions as how to manage COVID-19. And so another thing to note is that, the overarching principles based on our unity, and oneness, that we love, that we care, and we look at the whole well-being of the community. So there are certain topics that can actually be divisive if we do not wisely approach it, and this is one of them. The reality of many Pacific communities is that, firstly, they respect other fellow human beings. I'll give you an example. In the Tongan community, the women are socially higher than the men. My sister, even though we are into our this age, she can still come around and ask something of me, and I'm obligated, through our values and our family practices, common to many, if not all Tongan families, to serve the needs of, of the sister. Why is that? Because the men, would be playing the protective part, and the women will play their role as the caring part in the family, and all of that. And so it's a balancing symbiotic relationship. And so when it comes to other aspects of gender, it needs to be explored. In the Pacific, one of the big discussions there is the CEDAW, the UN. And if this question has an aspect of that, it will take time for us to explore. But there is equality practiced differently in the Pacific community. But about equality is there's love for everyone. And even if you see yourself as different gender-wise from the rest of the family. I don't have time to go deeply into this because gender is culturally located in the Tongan community, like in the Maori community, before European contact, and they have their rightful place. But I won't go there because in the interest of time, but people can ask me outside this conversation, by email. Thank you, Viliami.
Thank you, Sione. And actually, we only have about 5 or 6 minutes to wrap up this session. And thank you very much for staying along with us. And as you know, you have our contact. And please continue to ask us questions even after this session. You're most welcome, and we can continue this conversation on as a group. If you write to us to a Health Promotion Forum, or individually to ask those of us, even those 2 speakers, I allow you to continue to bother them for until Christmas to field your question directly to them. Lavinia, can I go back to you to sum up any other concern from the audience?
No, there are no more questions, Viliami. I'm just, have we actually answered the previous question on the gender issue? Sione and Kathleen, did you get a chance to have a look at it on the chat section?
Yeah. They have discussed that.
Yeah.
Can anybody else have any comments before? I think Emma or Lavinia wants to ask you to please show your face so we can take a nice picture. Is that what Lavinia is trying to do?
Yes, just to let you know that if you agree to get a picture, it will be used on our comms platforms. So if you're happy for that, if you could just put your videos on and we can take a snapshot of you. So thank you.
Yeah. Please let us see your beautiful faces, and then we take a picture. While I just wrapping up here very briefly, I think this is, as you all agree, this has been such a marvelous feast that Sione and Kathleen have generously shared with us not only their skill and their knowledge, but also their experience. And I think we all appreciate it. And I think you also appreciate the fact that maybe our time is so short. there's a a tendency for us to talk too much sometimes, but I think it's also very, very useful for us to share our thinking when we are talking. So I would continue to encourage all of you to please continue to be in touch with us, and we can expand and our discussion in any of these topic beyond today's session. And I think just to sum up, I think a lot of things that we talked about today, again, of course, we were focusing on engaging meaningfully, to have a purpose and be transformational in the way that we engage with our Pacific people. And actually the key to the Pacific people is through their hearts. They used to say the key to a man's heart is through their stomach, but through the key to a Pacific person is through their heart. We actually, in general, people tend to actually think with their heart. If it feels right, they would go out their way to do it. The other very important thing in the Pacific culture, of course, is respect. You will never go wrong. Just show your respect, and even if you're ignorant in some part, but if you respect, people will respect you back. And finally, I would say that due to the Pacific people ourselves, I think sometimes we have the tendency to sit back and use our culture or its specific ways. It's just how we are. And we use this as a crutch or as an excuse not to participate fully in what is happening in Aotearoa and New Zealand. Remember, Pacific people, we are here to stay in New Zealand. And New Zealand is a Pacific island. They are part of us and we are part of them. And I think we have to continue to be fully participate. And as I have in my introductory slides, we do have the power and we do have the know-how, and we do know how to engage with our people. And I think it is up to us as well to share that with everyone else in our sphere of experience, of influence. So with that, I would like to thank you very much for everybody, and I'll hand it over to Lavinia and Emma to take our group photo before we close.
I think they have. Lavinia?
Clicking away merrily here while you've been talking.
Okay,
okay, great, great. And if this, yep, yes, Lavinia, what do you say?
You could just take one more really pose shot, that might be a bit better, so everybody can be prepared, because so I'm ready soon. Can everybody just look at the camera and say cheese? All done. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. And let me just close with karakia. We are so humble to know that you are with us, and you promise that you will never leave us or forsake us. The many thoughts and ideas, and we have this thinking about this and that, but you already know, and you have a plan, and your plan for each of us is far better and higher than the way we've been thinking about that. Lord, you know how we desire, it's our desire that we would be able to be the channel of your goodness, so that we can touch the lives of the people, especially the people of the Pacific. That we touch their hearts and their minds, so that they will enable their hands and their feet to move and act accordingly. Thank you very much for everybody who has been here today, and we ask your blessing in the mighty name of Christ our Lord. Amen.